Song 34. The Challenge from the Logicians. Obeisance to all gurus. Having fully mastered the mind realms of himself and others, Jetson Milarepa was able to cause Dharma Bodhi of India to make obeisance to him. His fame thus spread afar. The people of Nyanyon at that time all made offerings to him for the benefit of both the living and the dead. With ever-increasing fortune, he remained happily in the belly cave of Nyanyon to help sentient beings. Now there were some scholar monks, logicians and theologians in the Nyanyon monastery who were very jealous of Milarepa. They vilified him by calling him a heretic and heaped many abuses upon him. At one time a mild famine broke out in Nyanyon, and many villagers went to the scholar monks for loans in order to buy seeds for sowing. The monks said to them, "Since we do not practice or know anything about heretic teachings, we have never received any offerings from you people for performing the rites for the dead. Our largesse is used for the single purpose of providing provisions for studying and practice of the Immaculate Dharma, which of course is of no help to you. Now if you want a loan, you should go to your heretic teacher to whom you gave all your belongings when you had them." Thus the people's request was rejected. One among the borrowers commented, "Well, to some extent, what the monks have said is quite true. We may regard the Jetson as our refuge too, in this life and the lives after, but we have needs in this life too. We should therefore also make offerings to the scholar monks." Then the villagers made an agreement and compromised with the monastery. Not long after this incident, the scholar monks held a conference under the leadership of Lodrum Gedundabum and Radan Dharma Lodru. One confrere said, "Milarepa must be chased out of this place, otherwise we can never attract more people or spread our teachings. Besides, Milarepa's teaching is heretical and evil. He surely deserves to be ousted." But the elders replied, "It would not look well if we drove him out. People would criticize us. The best way is to send 3 of our most learned scholars who are well versed in Sanskrit logic and philosophy and the sutras to challenge him in debate on Buddhist doctrines. Since he is so ignorant, possessing nothing but a tongue, he will not be able to answer our challenges and arguments. Out of 100 questions at best he may answer but 1 or 2. Then we can scorn and abuse him. Mortified by such a disgrace, he will run away of his own accord." 3 most learned scholars were then sent to the Jetson. When Rachungpa saw them coming, he was not pleased. He went in and asked Milarepa, "There are 3 scholar monks here who want to see you. Should I let them in?" The Jetson replied, "My Guru Marpa said to me, you should devote your body, mouth and mind to benefit sentient beings in all possible ways. Even in your daily conversation, you should try to serve them. By all means, let them in. I will see them." Then they were led in and given water to refresh them. Milarepa said, "The power of one's faith can split rocks, crack the earth and divide the water. Now please preach for me the teaching of the sutras." The leader of the scholars then rose from his seat, snapping his fingers, and said proudly, "Yes, we are teachers who have mastered the 3 learnings and the disciplines and possess the 3 robes of the Dharma, the symbol and source of all merits. I may or may not preach for you the teachings of the sutras, but now let me ask you first, what merit do you possess that you, a layman, have been receiving and enjoying people's offerings and gifts without the slightest qualm and with so much confidence?" In answer to his question, the Jetson sang, "My realizations from meditation. Embodied in my Guru's nectar-like instruction is the pinnacle Dharma of the ultimate truth, the essence of all teachings from scriptures and from reason, to which all scholars and priests aspire in veneration. Pray may he not depart from me, but ever sit above me as my glorious adornment. To you learned scholars I now relate my devotion practices by dividing them into 3 groups. The first group that I practice is the arising yoga of my patron Buddha. The second is the nadis, pranas and bindus. The third is the Mahamudra. In the 4 periods of each day, I practice the yoga of Bodhi mind. In accumulating the true bread of faith, I contemplate the voidness. In accumulating the karmic bread of faith, I offer the Dharma. In accumulating the bread of self-faith, I give oblations to the deities. To the ghosts I give away the Dharma of elements. I am a yogi who turns the wheel of nourishment. Having realized the voidness of all things, I am qualified to receive and enjoy offerings." One of the scholars said, "As a person with maimed hands can never climb mountains, so one without knowledge of the Buddhist studies can never attain liberation. As a blind man sees nothing in the chapel, so one without experience of meditation will never see reality. To practice the arising yoga, one must first know how to practice it. Now you said that you have done so, but tell us how. The Jetson then sang. When I practice the arising yoga of the patron Buddha, I see my body vivid like a rainbow yet void, of which no substance whatsoever can be found. So have I freed myself from all desires. All talk is like an echo in a deserted valley. For it I have neither fancy nor aversion. So have I exhausted all likes and dislikes. The illuminating void of mind is like the radiance of the sun and moon, without limitation or attribute. Dissolved into it, my ego clinging becomes naught. The common human body, word, and mind are themselves the body, speech, and wisdom of the self-Buddha. Being free from all that's vulgar, I always feel great happiness and joy. I am happy because my deeds are in accord with Dharma. I am inspired because I follow the right Dharma path. What you have said may be correct, commented the scholar. Now tell me how you practice the nadis, pranas, and bindus. In reply, the Jetson sang. In practicing the nadis, pranas, and bindus, I meditate on the 3 channels and 4 centers. As the attachment to body is exhausted, the ego into naught dissolves itself. The key words of the 5 elements are purified, so they vanish not but become illumined. I behold the self-face of reality, so there is no chance for me to make mistakes. The pranas are all gathered in the central channel, and thus they hit the vital point. The white and red forces unite within me. The experiences of bliss, illumination, and non-thought spontaneously arise, and so the knots of doubt and ignorance are untied. I practice the Dharma by heart and not by mouth. I conjoin together the mother and son light, and exterminate the complex of desires. As form and void into one are merged, my mind is at ease and full of joy. I am ever happy, for I never fall into the trap of mere conceptualization of the void. As all confusions have vanished into Dharmadhatu, I feel but joyful and gay. The scholar then said, the marmots who live underground can hibernate for 4 months during one flow of the prana current without even slightly shaking their bodies. Remaining under the water for any length of time, the fishes can still survive. They can do so merely because of their inherited prana powers, yet these animals cannot be conceived of as possessing any merit, as their minds are completely blind. You should know that all merits consist in one's understanding. Now tell me, how do you practice your so-called Mahamudra? The Jetson sang. When I practice Mahamudra, I rest myself in the intrinsic state, relaxing without distraction or effort in the realm of voidness. I rest myself with illumination in the realm of blissfulness. I rest myself in awareness in the realm of non-thought. I rest myself with a naked mind in manifestations and activities. I rest myself in samadhi, meditating on the mind essence in such a manner. Numerous understandings and convictions arise. By self-illumination all is accomplished without effort. Looking no more for enlightenment, I am extremely happy. Free from both hope and fear, I feel very joyful. Oh, what a pleasure it is to enjoy confusion when as wisdom it appears. It is true that from your mouth no meaningful thing can come out but your tongue, remarked the scholar. What you have just said seems not so bad, but is it like an imitation of the original thing? Now tell us, who is your guru? The Jetson replied, I attain all my knowledge through studying my mind within. Thus all my thoughts become the teachings of Dharma. So long as I do not become separated from my own mind, I am always accompanied by sutras. I have realized that all manifestations are mind, and the mind itself is the illumination. These are my gurus, whereupon he said, I shall now tell you who my gurus are. My gurus are the Jetsons, whose immaculate bodies manifest as the Buddha's pure land. The purified 5 pranas are their thrones. The purified 5 nadis are their lotus seats. The purified 5 elephants are their sun and moon cushions. The void mind essence is my guru's body. My guru is Dorje Chang and the wisdom body. My guru is Tilopa with the 6 miraculous powers. My guru is Naropa with the net of myriad spells. My guru is Marpa, to whom I owe the greatest debt. They sit ever upon my head as my glory. If you have a pair of clear and sincere eyes, you will see them as real Buddhas. If with sincerity and faith you pray to them, the rain of grace will ever fall upon you. If you are of a practice and devotion, the treasury of accomplishments will be open to you. Having heard this song, Faith in the Jetson was aroused in the three scholars. They all bowed down to him and said, "Ignorance, blindness, and confusion, these three evils have created all misfortune in the world. How true this is! How true this is! With our blind minds we thought that you were an ignorant man, who took people's offerings by deceiving them with your crazy dharmas. But you have answered our challenging questions with ease and without the slightest hesitation. We now regret very much the quarrel we have imposed upon you. Please forgive us. Since we do not have the opportunity or merits to meet your gurus, we shall look up to you and pray to you with sincerity and veneration, for you are even greater than the treasury of accomplishments. Pray now vouchsafe us the initiations and instructions." So they besought Milarepa in a very humble and respectful manner. The Jetson was greatly pleased. He then gave them the initiations and fifth instructions and set them to meditating. Later they all gained experiences and realizations and became the three enlightened snow, lion, light yogi scholars. Now at this time the people of Nyanyon had a great festival in the village and invited the Jetson and all his disciples, including these three scholar priests, to attend. A throne was prepared for the scholar priests Lodron and Darlo, and also a row of seats for the other scholar monks. A throne and more seats were made ready for the Jetson and his Repa disciples. The three scholar priests who were sent to dispute with the Jetson came. Dressed like yogis, they appeared as Repas, sitting on the lower seats, and drank wine from the cupola, draught by draught. When Lodron and Darlo saw this, they were convulsed with rage, and said to themselves, "You scoundrels, dirty lice, betrayers! As long as you stay here, our doctrine will be disparaged and confounded. We will talk to these dirty traitors and get rid of them in an appropriate manner." Lodron then got up from his seat and said to the Jetson, "You are an extraordinary yogi, so you must have a sound knowledge of logic. Otherwise, acting like this, you will degrade the Dharma, ruin yourself and others, and disqualify yourself as a Dharma practitioner. Therefore, please give us a simple proposition in accordance with the rules of logic." The Jetson replied, "My dear scholar, you should try to rest yourself in the inborn Dharma essence instead of in words and talk. In daily life you should always attempt to subdue your desires. Correct understanding and merit can only grow from within. Otherwise you will be driven into the miserable realms by jealousy and the five kleshas. So please do not ruin yourself. I do not understand the logic of your school. My own logic is that of the Guru, of the fifth instructions, of diligence and perseverance, of remaining in solitude, of meditating in the hermitage, of producing the realizations and true understanding within, of the sincere patrons with true faith, and of being a genuine and worthwhile receiver of patronage. Being bound by the logic of jealousy and evil cravings, one is liable to experience the logic of hell and suffer the logic of pain. I do not know any logic other than this. In order fully to describe my logic, I shall sing to you. So listen to me. I bow down to my klesha-free gurus. Alas, at this time of defilement, great is people's jealousy. Please listen to me, Lodron and Darlo. If from my mother's womb I did not come, how could I have drunk her milk? If she fed me not on her sweet milk, how could I have eaten the three kinds of grain? If I did not eat the grain, how could I have grown up? If I did not grow up, how could I have crossed the door? If I did not cross the door, how could I have wandered in all countries? If I did not visit all countries, how could I have found my gracious Guru? If I did not meet my Guru, how could I have received the fifth instructions? Without instructions, how could I meditate in solitude? Without meditating in solitude, how could the inner experience and realization arise? Without the realizations and the inner heat, how could I keep warm in a garment of sheer cotton cloth? If I cannot live in a cotton robe, how can the patrons have faith in me? If my patrons have no faith in me, how can you, a teacher scholar, be jealous of me? If jealousy and hatred had never arisen in you, how could you, a teacher scholar, go to hell? On the high plateau yonder, the wild beasts run and play. Making the hounds keen and jealous is not the very reason for becoming the hounds becoming angry. In the belly cave of Nyanyon, I, the worthy Milarepa, stay. This makes you, the teacher of words, painfully envious. Is not this the very reason you are so distraught, seeing the alms offered by my patrons? You, the learned priest, become jealous. Isn't this why you are angry and confused? O great teachers and scholars, cling not to meaningless words and empty talk, deeming them to be the truth. Even heretics can play with them. One can waste 32 lives and gain naught. If his mind but follows words, it would be much better, therefore, to conquer the devil of egotism. I have no time to waste in words, and still more words, nor do I know logic or how to pose a proposition. Therefore you are the one who wins the argument today. Darlo then said, I asked you in the language of Dharma, but you did not answer my question in Buddhist terms. Instead you have sung a deceptive song to cheat gullible folk, who cannot sing this kind of trash. Your song may deceive fools, but never me. If you cannot answer my questions today with scholastic language, in Buddhist terms of academic tradition, but shamelessly still intend to receive alms from people with your deceiving songs, you well deserve to be trampled down. Saying this, he seized a handful of earth and threw it in the Jetson's face. The Jetson brushed it off, smiled at him, and said, How can you, the scholar who adheres to words and books merely for the sake of your pleasures of this life, act in accordance with the Dharma? Driven by your powerful karmas and sins, all your learning and priestly disciplines will only bring you more unhappiness. As I understand them, all dharmas are remedies for human passions and desires, but the way in which you practice them will only increase your passions and desires. Therefore, my dharma and yours are completely different and contradictory. Since we do not speak the same language nor believe in the same principle, how can we find a common base from which to discuss the dharma? Now, seeing all these things, Vajrayana thought to himself, although I am not worthy even to match a single hair of my guru's head, if I do not beat this sinner who is now trying to hurt the Jetson, I shall then violate the Samaya commandment. But if I punish him, I will create great merits. He then picked up a stick and, rushing towards the priest, was about to strike him. At once the Jetson caught his arm, saying, Vajrayana, my son, the wealth that cannot be used when one is in want, the kinsmen who do not assist when one is in need, and the Dharma that cannot help when one is under adverse conditions, will only make one more miserable. You should control yourself and try hard to think of the admonishments. I shall now sing a song to awaken your good thoughts and awareness. I bow down to Marpa, my gracious Guru and my glory, the great Jetson, the shelter of all beings. I pray you save us from doing evil deeds. O Vajrayana, my son, calm yourself and listen to me. Those hypocritical Buddhists who talk big become commoners at once when they meet with adverse conditions. Because their intentions are evil, from wrongdoings they will always suffer. If you ever fight with people, you violate the precepts through and through. Calm yourself, my son, and listen to your Guru. In the vast firmament of the peerless Dharma, my eagle child of awareness learns to fly, but never should he pride himself on his flying power, lest he fall into the sectarian abyss. Vajrayana, listen to your Guru's words. In the great ocean of the Dharma practice, my fish child of awareness learns to swim, but never should he pride himself on his power of swimming, lest he fall into the net of confusion. Vajrayana, listen to your Guru's words. On the snow mountain of Dharma actions, my lion child of awareness learns to fight, but he should never pride himself on his fighting power, lest he be lost in the snowstorm of desires. Vajrayana, listen to your Guru's words. In the precious land of Dharma accomplishment, my child of awareness learns to trade, but never should he trade with shrewdness, lest he lose the great pearl of Dharma essence. Vajrayana, listen to your Guru's word and try to keep your temper, lest you be scorched by anger. Vajrayana, discipline yourself and quench your passions. Hearing the Jetson's song, Vajrayana calmed down. The patrons in the assembly all blamed the scholar priests. Vajrayana was also slightly criticized for his outburst. After this incident, the patrons were all confirmed with a deeper faith than ever in Milarepa. It was the scholar priests who first had the intention of slandering the Jetson, but in doing so they had only disgraced and discredited themselves. Being frustrated and humiliated, Darlo, Loddon, and some other monks again went to the Jetson on the following day to seek revenge. They brought much meat and many books with them. When they arrived, they asked permission to see the Jetson in order to apologize for the conduct of the day before. Vajrayana said, There is no need for apology, nor for further debate, and there was no necessity for you to meet the Jetson. While Vajrayana was trying to stop them, some other disciples slipped into the Jetson's room and besought him to see the priests. He said very kindly, The best thing is not to do any wrong, but if you have and can repent of it with sincerity afterwards, this is also very good. Now let the scholar priest come in and talk to me. Thus he accepted the interview. The priest then offered the meat and said, Yesterday you were in the right. We regret what we did. In apology we offer you this meat. Using these books as frames of reference for judgment, let us now discuss the Buddhist teachings in a friendly manner. The Jetson replied, Dear teachers, the proverb says, judging from the complexion of his face, one knows whether the man has eaten or not. In the same light, the fact that one knows or knows not the Dharma can easily be detected by whether he can conquer his own ego-clinging desires. If he can, this proves he knows and also practices the Buddhist teachings. One may be very eloquent in talking about the Dharma and win all the debates, but if he cannot subdue even a fraction of his own ego-clinging desires, but merely indulges himself in words and talk, his victories in debates will never bring him any profit, but will only increase his egotism and pride. This is the cause of wandering forever in samsara and falling to the bottom of hell. Therefore, as you can see, all this argumentation is harmful and destructive. Your apology for your misconduct yesterday is very good indeed. Now we have finished our discussion and you may return to your home. Darley then said, Only Buddha can say whether one has conquered his ego-clinging and desires. One may not be able to subdue his ego-clinging, but that does not mean his knowledge about Buddhism and eloquence in debate condemns him to fall into hell and wander in samsara forever. To say that is to say knowledge and learning are sinful. One may claim that scholarship itself is a great sin, but this will not absolve him from his conceit of being virtuous, nor protect him from doing the wrong thing even with a right intention. This perhaps will cause his direct fall to the bottom of hell. Therefore it is of great importance to learn well and to distinguish what is right and what is wrong. For these reasons we must discuss the Buddhist teachings. Since I am familiar with the rules and manners of conducting a debate, I suggest that you choose a topic in which you are well versed and propound a proposition in its light. We will then evaluate it and give you our opinion. On the other hand, if you think that we are not well-learned scholars, you may ask us any question you like, and we will try to answer it. The Jetson replied, If you must insist, I have no other choice. Both of us are known to the people here. They have heard of us, see us, and know of us well. I shall now take up a topic beyond both erudition and ignorance. I will ask you some questions. Also, I will propound my proposition on Buddhist teachings. Now please answer me. Is space obstructing or non-obstructing? The scholars replied, No one would ever ask this kind of question. But since I have given my word just now, I must give you my answer. Of course, space is non-obstructing. What else could it be? But I think space is obstructing, said the Jetson. What is your reasoning for daring to make such a presumptuous assertion? In the meantime, Milarepa had entered the samadhi of solidifying space, and replied, Let us see whether space is obstructing or non-obstructing. Now, will you please stand up and move forward, or stretch your limbs? The scholar then tried to move, but found he could not do so. He had to remain in his original posture, unable even to open his mouth, and sat stiffly there, like a dead image. Whereupon the Jetson levitated and walked, stood, lay down, and sat in the lotus posture, right out in space. Then he emerged from samadhi and said to the scholar, You have maintained that space is not obstructing, but why cannot you move your body? This is because you have learned evil spells and black magic from your gurus. What happened to me was simply due to your evil mantras and sorceries. It is a well-known fact recognized by all sentient beings that space is non-obstructing. Milarepa then asked, Is it true that without conceptualization and rationalization, space is regarded by all as non-obstructing? Do the animals also consider space to be so? You and your teachers who deem that it is are now refuted by your own experiment. All of this may be due to my black magic, but the fact that the obstructing nature of space has been proved to you is quite sufficient. Now I shall give you my proposition. I declare that the rock in front of us is non-obstructing. What is your reaction to this statement? The scholar replied, Unless you apply your evil mantras and sorceries again, the rock cannot be otherwise than obstructing. To this the Jetson said, In accordance with what you suggested in the beginning, that each party may test the other to any subject, I now want to test your magic powers, for I do not think that you are well versed in this subject. Now please perform some magic to make the rock in front of us become non-obstructing. To be able to make magic and to be willing to do so are two quite different things, replied the scholar. Capable of making does not mean being allowed to make. Only you evildoers play these black magic tricks to cheat others. Just now you gave me the impression that you seem to know and can do everything, said the Jetson. What you called forbidden magic is now being performed like rainfall by infinite Buddhas throughout the universe. Loudon then said, just as space becomes obstructing a while ago, now please demonstrate a spell for making the rock non-obstructing. Whereupon the Jetson entered the samadhi of space exhaustion, making the rock permeable, and then passed through it from the top to the bottom and from one side to the other. Also he kept half of his body in the rock and half outside of it. Then he threw the rock up and let it fall. Finally he lifted up the rock with his hand and cried to Rachungpa, bring a pillar. Rachungpa brought a pillar-shaped stone and set it up. Milarepa then placed the huge rock upon it, leaving his handprints indented in the rock. These marks can be seen to this very day. The scholar Lodron then said, it seems that you have made the rock non-obstructing. If this is not delusive magic, we too should be able to pass through the rock. Now tell us, can we also do it? The Jetson replied, of course, if the rock were obstructing, should I not have been killed when it fell? The scholar Darlo then said, the rock never touched me. If there was no rock in the first place, what is the use of talking about its non-obstructiveness? The fact that you did not feel the rock come down and crush you is a very proof that it is non-obstructing, replied the Jetson. That you fail to feel a thing does not imply the non-existence of that thing. Now Darlo became even more angry than before, but Loudon began to be uncertain and to waver. He thought, all this seems to be genuine. We sceptical and incredulous scholars are always very difficult to convince. If these performances are not created by magic, but are proofs of his accomplishment in the past, I should acquire from him the teaching of the 6 parameters. He then asked, will you please tell us how to practice the 6 parameters? In answer, Milarepa sang, O 3 great precious refuges sitting on my head as my joy and glory, I pray with a sincere heart that you may never leave me. I pray you to fold me in your compassion. I pray that you attend me with kind thoughts. I pray you to grant ultimate truth to all sentient beings. The Mahayana yogi hears not the Dharma of mere words. In the truth of voidness he knows there is no practice, so he renounces of himself the 10 vices. If from parsimony one cannot free oneself, what is the use of discussing charity? If one does not forswear hypocrisy and pretense, what is the use of keeping discipline? If one abjures not malicious revilings, what is the use of exercising pretentious patience? If one abandons not indifference and inertness, what is the use of swearing to be moral? If one conquers not the errant thoughts within, what is the use of toiling in meditation? If one does not see all forms as helpful, what is the use of practicing the wisdom? If one knows not the profound teaching of forbidding and allowing, what is the use of learning? If one knows not the art of taking and rejecting, what is the use of speaking on karma causation? If one's mind does not accord with Dharma, what is the use of joining the order? If the poisonous snake of klesha is not killed, the yearning for wisdom only leads to fallacy. If venomous jealousy is not overcome, one's yearning for bodhi mind will be an illusion. If one refrains not from hurting people, his longing for respect and honour is merely wishful thinking. If one cannot conquer ego-clinging and prejudice, his craving for the equality of Dharma only brings wrong views. If one cannot subdue the demon clinging ego, his kleshas will be great and his yoga bound to fail. If one's actions conform not with the Dharma, he will always hinder the good deeds of others. If one has not yet absorbed his mind in Dharma, his babbling and prattling will only disturb others' minds. Therefore, do not waste your life in words and chatter, but try to gain the assurance of no regret and the confidence of facing death. Well, I admit that you have heard of the 6 parameters, commented Darlo. Now tell me, how should one practice the 10 parameters? In answer to his challenge, Milarepa sang, O gracious Jetson Marpa the translator, I pray you to quench the dharmas of jealousy. I pray you to protect us in these evil times. Now listen to me, Darlo, you evil-minded scholar. Without remembering or thinking of death, you have indulged in words and arguments. For the past 32 years you have failed to realize this fact, but you can gain far more if you devote yourself to actual practice. Alas, in this time of defilement, great are people's passions and desires, and unbearably glib are sinful people's tongues. On the other shore of non-ego, which I have reached, there is no distinct parameter of charity. On the straightforward other shore of which I live, there is no distinct parameter of discipline. On the other shore of no separation from devotion, there is no distinct parameter of diligence. On the other shore of the immediate presence where I dwell, there is no distinct parameter of concentration. On the other shore of realizing the Absolute, there is no distinct parameter of wisdom. On the other shore of all perfections where I live, there is no distinct parameter of means. On the other shore of conquering 4 demons, there is no distinct practical parameter of power. On the other shore of 2 benefits where I dwell, there is no distinct practice called parameter of vow. Since the faulty glaciers are themselves illumination, there is no thing outstanding to be known as wisdom. This is the right way of practicing the Dharma. Empty words are useless and help little. Your practices and understanding are indeed right, exclaimed Loudon. On the other hand, Darley remarked, your words are like third-hand imitations. They cannot stand close examination. As to the magic and sorcery, even pagans can perform them perfectly. The 10 parameters you have just talked about are merely nominal. They are not at all in accordance with the books. Now, we should discuss the subjects indicated in them. He pointed to the books in front of him and continued. All human knowledge should be examined and evaluated through logic. Logic is the most important science of the learning. If one knows logic, all other studies become secondary. Therefore, I shall first discuss logic with you. If you can answer my questions, I shall then acknowledge you. Generally speaking, logic is the study of the judgment and definitions, of which the most important subjects are the studies of direct experience, of inference and deduction, of sufficient reasoning and false reasoning, of non-decisive proofs, and of the patterns for constructing propositions. Now tell me about all these things. The Jetson replied, Teacher, your body and mind are both possessed by devils. Since you have neither faith in yourself and in your yidam, nor any veneration towards Buddha himself, how can I expect you to agree with me? When I drink the soup of your favourite Dharma of no compassion, my tongue and palate are burned. When I eat the food of your beloved Dharma of no renunciation, which tastes like a dish of vegetable greens cooked with dust and ashes, but without any salt or seasoning, my stomach is filled with arrogance and egotism. Then from the upper part of my body I belch with self-conceit and vomit the waste of jealousy. From the lower part I break the wind of slandering and discharge the feces and urine of vanity. I am then caught by the deadly sickness of injuring all. Therefore I know nothing about your teachings, which, if used as an antidote, would only worsen the sickness, and as a Dharma would only lead people to sin. What I understand is that all manifestations consist in mind, and mind is illuminating voidness, without any shadow or impediment. Of this truth I have a decisive understanding, therefore not a single trace of inference or deduction can be found in my mind. If you want me to give some examples of false reasoning, your own knowledge is a good one, because it is against the Dharma. But since this false reasoning only enhances your cravings and makes them sufficient, it is a good example of sufficient reasoning. Your hypocritical and pretentious priestly manner contains the elements of both false and sufficient reasoning, which in turn stand as a good example of non-decisive proof. Hearing the Jetson's remarks, Loudon covered his head with his shawl and laughed. Darlow shook his head, burst out laughing, and cried, Thank you for correcting my spelling. You are the one who can hardly imagine the difference between the head and the tail of my feces, but yet takes himself as the holy Buddha. How amusing! How ridiculous! You said that both my body and mind are possessed by devils, but who is the witness of that? If it is because of scholarship and knowledge of logic that I praise myself and denounce others, you are just like me, for you even talk as if you were Buddha himself, and humiliate me even to this extent. By the same token, you have your own logic. In brief, you have no merits or fortune to learn the right doctrine. Besides, instead of answering my question correctly, you have puffed out a lot of nonsense and big words, bigger than the penis of an ass. I think you had better hide it, sit quietly and shut your mouth. The Jetson replied, I wanted to sit quietly, but you would not let me. Naturally, you have no need for my logic, but my logic has brought me happiness and peace. Therefore, it is very helpful and important. Since I was talking to you from the viewpoint of the innate truth, which just hit you on the spot, it appeared as if I were praising myself. The minds of all sentient beings are void yet illuminating. They can neither be affected by the defilements of samsara nor by the glories of nirvana. This very mind is called the Buddha of universal origin, or the treasury of Buddhahood. It is only because we do not understand ourselves that our minds are veiled by temporal blindness. We as a result begin to wander in samsara and become miserable sentient beings of desire. He who fully realizes his own mind is called the Enlightened One, the Pure One, or the Buddha, and he attains nirvana. Lord Buddha said, "The matrix of Buddhahood permeates all sentient beings. All beings are therefore Buddhas in themselves." Also he said, "Sentient beings are Buddhas in themselves, yet are they veiled by temporal defilements. Once the defilements are cleansed, then they will be Buddhas." Buddha also said, "He who realizes his own mind knows that the mind itself is the wisdom, and no longer searches for Buddha from other sources. This is the highest teaching one can practice. As I understand it, whoever realizes the inborn illuminating void mind becomes Buddha. I consider that the ultimate truth is no other than the realization of one's own mind, but you scholars have no faith in this. As to your body and mind being in the hands of devils, evidence can be shown, and all people here may witness it. However, this would hurt and damage you too much, therefore it is better that I do not talk about it." The scholar replied, "How wonderful is this! You say that my mind and body are in the hands of devils. If you have any convincing proof, why don't you bring it out now? I think I am much better than those fakers who cheat people, though, through deceptive sorcery and gloomy songs." The Jetson smiled at him and said, "Well, if you insist, I have no choice but to convince you. Now pay attention and try to understand what I'm going to say. A thing that you cherished with great affection is now in someone else's hand. Is not this very action of giving a cherished thing to another itself a sufficient proof that your body and mind are possessed by devils?" Hearing this, Darlow was nonplussed. His face first turned green and then black, though the Jetson tried to stop Vachungpa from further exposing Darlow's scandals. Vachungpa would not listen and went forward to a girl among the visitors who had little faith towards the Jetson but great faith in Vachungpa, and took a bracelet off her wrist. Darlow was so ashamed that he became utterly speechless. Then, recovering himself, he turned on the Jetson and Vachungpa, attacked them outrageously in abusive language, and walked out. Vachungpa was so delighted that he showed the bracelet to everyone. Afterwards, Vachungpa went again to the girl's home and obtained a rosary that the scholar had given her, and brought it back and showed it all. People were thus convinced of Darlow's infamy. Meanwhile, the scholar Loudon thought, if the information was not given to Milarepa by others, he must be a genuine and great accomplished being. I must think of a way to test him. Then remarked, "We have had enough discussions and debates today." He returned home. On that same evening he poured blood into his begging bowl and filled his skull cup with milk, and inverted the image of Gautama Buddha and his attendants. He said to himself, "If he knows what I have done, then he is really an accomplished being and has genuine miraculous powers." The next day Loudon went to the Jetson again. Upon his arrival he first met Vachungpa, who said to him, "Well, my dear scholar, have you come to disgrace yourself and the Dharma again?" Loudon replied, "No, this time I have come to pay homage to the Jetson, for I now have great faith in him." Saying this, he slipped into Milarepa's room. The Jetson smiled at him and commented, "My dear teacher, you don't have to test me like this. I see all the secrets hidden in your heart as vividly as if they were in my own hand. You have poured the essence of the 5 poisons into the monk's utensil, the bowl, and poured the juice supposedly to fill the begging bowl into the skull cup. Also, you purposely inverted the Buddha's and Bodhisattva's images. Now please do not do such reactionary things that no Dharma follower would dream of doing. Please pour the right drinks into the right vessels and put the images back in the correct positions." When Loudon heard this remark, he was nonplussed and frightened half to death. His faith in the Jetson then rose high. "Pray preach me the Dharma that you practice yourself," he implored, "for I am now fully convinced." Milarepa replied, "It's very good that you now consider yourself convinced, but my teachings cannot be given to the wrong person, one who is not capable of receiving them. Listen to my reasons. I bow down to Marpa the translator. I pray you to enable me, the mendicant, to observe the secret precepts. The The divine teachings of the secret doctrine are precious yet formidable. Should I give them to you, the bigoted scholar who knows nothing but words and argument, it would be a sheer waste. If one absorbed in meditation talks nonsense, his meditation will be ruined and interrupted. The teachings of Tantrum should be practiced secretly. They will be lost if demonstrated in the marketplace. Accomplishment is attained by practicing the Bodhi mind. A great yogi will go astray if he follows priestly rules. The pith instructions are meant for good vessels. They will but wasted be. If given to the incapable, if one adheres first to seclusion, but later abandons it, his efforts will all be wasted. The songs of yogic experience are profound, but if one sings them to all people, it will only lead to waste and pride. There are too many ways in which to lose oneself and squander life. In answer to your question, I have said enough today. The scholar said again, "You may not like to tell me your inner experiences, but apparently you seem to have brought forth the wisdom through your meditations. Now please tell me briefly about your understanding of the initiation, path stages, view, practice, and action." The Jetson replied, "I know nothing of your teaching concerning these topics, but mine is as follows. I bow down at the feet of Marpa. I sing in answer to your question. Please listen and think carefully. And for a time forget your criticism. The best scenery is naught to see, that is the mind essence of illumination. The best gain is naught to get, that is the priceless treasure of mind essence. The best food for satiation is naught to eat, that is the food of beyond form samadhi. The best drink is naught to quaff, that is the nectar of the Bodhi mind. Wisdom is but self-awareness beyond all words and talk. This is not the Hinayanist world, this is no realm for fools. The highest initiation is that of this. He who realizes the truth of nor high nor low has reached the highest stage. He who realizes the truth of no action is following the supreme path. He who realizes the truth of no birth, no death, obtains the best that he can hope for. He who realizes the truth of no inference has mastered the best logic. He who realizes the truth of no great, no small, understands the teaching of the supreme vehicle. He who realizes the truth of no virtue and no evil has acquired the supreme means. He who realizes the truth of not two has attained the supreme view. He who realizes the truth of no observations knows the supreme way to meditate. He who realizes the truth of no accepting and no abandoning knows the supreme way to practice. He who realizes the truth of no effort approaches the highest accomplishment. This truth cannot be understood by arrogant and self-conceited teachers, the prideful scholars of mere words, and the great yogis who prejudice, for they are those who aspire to liberation but only find enslavement. They are caught by the two clingings. They want emancipation but only find confinement. They want release but are bound instead. They sink down to the bottom of samsara. They wander in the three gloomy realms. After this, the scholar Loddon's pride and arrogance were completely broken down. He prostrated himself before the Jetson and asked him for the Dharma, but he was not able to get the instructions from the Jetson at that time. Confirmed with great faith, he said to Milarepa, "The debates we have had are indeed true debates. I admit that you have won." He then returned home and said to Darlo, "I am convinced that what Milarepa has said is true, and that we logicians have little sincerity, faith, or devotion, nor do we have the pure thoughts and spirit of renunciation. I am now really sceptical about the usefulness of our knowledge. Truly, I do not know whether this knowledge is helpful or obstructive to the course of liberation. I also regret very much that I thought his genuine superpowers were morbid sorceries." Darlo replied, "The change in your attitude merely shows that you have no confidence in the Dharma. What you have said is like childish babbling. I think he is possessed by a great devil, and his magic powers and telepathy are merely devil-inspired. He does not know one iota of Buddhist teaching. Nor did I have an affair with that woman. His slanderous accusation was absolutely untrue." Saying this, he died, full of hatred and vicious thoughts. Because of his hate and cravings, he became a fearful demon after death. Later, the Jetson told his disciples, "Because of Darlo's ill-omened attack on me, he has now fallen to the far edge of samsara." Thus, those scholars who slandered the Jetson all incurred loss for themselves. Later, the scholar Loddon put himself in the Jetson's care. After meditating for some time, he eventually became the foremost of the 5 scholar yogis in the ranks of the close sons of Milarepa. His story will be related in the pages to follow. This is the story of Milarepa overcoming the ill-intentioned challenge of the scholars through his miraculous powers and wonder performances.